Hey everybody, Adam Shapiro here, live with Talkenomics. We're streaming from Brooklyn, New York. And let me just be honest, we'll get back to the financial stuff next week, but you're probably mourning your 401k and your portfolio. So everybody needs a good laugh. We need to cheer up because the Yiddish word is fakakta, and it means what it sounds like. The markets are fakakta, our futures are fakakta right now, and it starts with an F and it ends with an ukt. So we're going to get to money next week. And we'll talk money too with our guest tonight because Karith Foster, we're not going to show you her yet. Karith Foster is somebody I have known now for roughly 10, probably, it might be even 12 years. I met Karith at Fox. And I don't remember the moment I met her, but I remember thinking to myself, you got to meet this woman in person. And we did Talkenomics, Shapiro and Foster. We did Talkenomics when it was a podcast at Fox. We had a segment we called The Uncomfortable Conversation about race. Why don't they sell Black Barbie in Harlem? It took years to get Black Barbie into Harlem. Those kinds of issues. And the things that someone like me, the middle-aged white Caucasian guy, that's double white Caucasian. Anyway, you get the idea, would just miss. So when I had Karith on Talkenomics just a few weeks ago, we were talking about media. It was very serious. But what you need to know about Karith Foster is that she is a comedian. She has a long history with some big names. She is a big name herself. You can still see some of her comedy routines on YouTube. But let me just give you a little sample about her sense of humor. And this is from her 2017 TED Talk. And I think this will set up who is our guest tonight and what she's all about. So let's roll that first clip.
I grew up in a place called Plano, Texas, a place that happens to have the ethnic diversity of Sweden. This is me in second grade. Fourth grade, can you spot me? I played soccer. Take your time, I know it's difficult. And sixth grade. This continued on for the rest of my high school career, actually even college. My senior year of high school, I starred in an all-white production of the play A Raisin in the Sun. Two guesses on who the raisin was.
That would be like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir doing The Color Purple. All right, let's bring in Karith Foster because we do need a good laugh. And there's some serious stuff to talk about. Hello, my friend, and we will get into our history, but thank you for being here.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, I'll always have you back. And we're going to talk about the serious stuff. You have a business, INversity Solutions. It's about diversity without division. You are the author of a book. There's so much to talk about with you. But the first thing I got to ask you is, how are you doing? I mean, how is life? Because I know you're back there in Texas.
I am in Texas. So I do go back and forth between Texas and New York. I always love New York. It will always have a place in my heart. I always say I was raised in Texas, but I grew up in New York because I was there from right out of college and through adulthood, the early adulthood. So, I had my Sex in the City days.
Whoa. Because you and I used to talk about doing a morning live stream, and I still think if there's a producer out there who's watching, please, the two of us, because we don't have to censor ourselves, but your Sex in the City days, that could be a whole episode.
I did. And I think that's why I like the show Emily in Paris. I binge on it because to me, it's like the best combo of The Devil Wears Prada meets Sex in the City.
Okay.
And it took me back.
I
anyway.
don't know, and I would be the prude most likely because I remember once as a morning anchor in Cleveland, Ohio, the geniuses in management decided that instead of starting the show at 5 a.m. in the morning, we would start at 4:55. I mean, because people wake up. What idiot. Anyway, on that very first broadcast, my co-anchor said, "Good morning, Cleveland, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "And I'm Adam Shapiro. And if you're about to do the walk of shame, better hurry up because the sun's coming up." And she said to me, "You can't say that." And I said, "Yeah, you can." So
yes, you can. I just did.
So let's get back that experience in Plano, Texas. Let me share with some people a little bit of your story. You talk about your parents who are people who tried to get an apartment. Your father was in the service. Your mother, when she was 13, said, "I'm going to marry that guy." And when she was of age, they did get married 7 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
they weren't in Arkansas. They were in New Jersey.
But
I'm just kidding, Arkansas.
But people would not rent an apartment to them.
Yeah.
And so so this is part of your, it's part of the DNA of who you are. Is this part of what led you to comedy? Because you talk about in the TEDx.
I think I got brought into the world of comedy. I always say it found me versus I found it. I mean, from the time I was a little kid, and my parents are funny and they have a great sense of humor. And I think that humor is such a powerful thing when you are dealing with the tragedies and triumphs of life, the stuff that sucks, the stuff that's unfair, the stuff that is all the isms that are attached to it. And yeah, my father was a captain in the Air Force. They just gotten married. He was stationed in Great Falls, Montana. There was no room on the base, so they had to search for a home off base, which they didn't think was going to be that hard. And they would call up these places and be told, yeah, sure, come on over. And when they showed up and the people saw that who they were didn't match who they thought they were talking to on the phone, suddenly there was no vacancies. There was no room at the inn. So like baby Jesus, my mom had to go back to Camden instead of Nazareth, instead of the stall. And their first year of marriage, they actually lived apart from each other, which I didn't even realize until talking to them later in my adulthood.
Now I'm older than you, but this is a history that I think a lot of people don't appreciate. And as a white guy, look, there's a lot that, and we talked about this in the days at Fox during what we had the uncomfortable conversations. But the reason I think you and I have hit it off is my mom, before I was born, became friends with a woman she met at the Panel of American Women, Diane Smith. My mom, white Jewish from Portland, Maine. Diane Smith, black Catholic from New Orleans. They would, as their work with the Panel of American Women, my mother would call up apartments and say, hi, Brenda Bernstein here, her maiden name, and we want to come take a look at the apartment. And Lena would say, great. And then Diane Smith would go look at the apartment and say, I'm Brenda Bernstein. They say, oh, it's been rented. So a lot of people don't know that this is a history that many Americans had to face within our lifetime.
That happens now. Adam, I would have friends doing stand-up who would have to have the comedy club manager go out and hail a cab for them if they were a black man to be able to get to their next gig around town. Like, this still happens in its own way today.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, because we go through these phases in the country with race, and again, INversity Solutions, your business, I mean, you speak nationwide about these kinds of issues, but you do it from a different perspective. I said jokingly with friends before the show started, I said, we're going to have a great show because guaranteed we're going to say something that's going to piss off people on the left, and guaranteed we're going to say something that pisses off people on the right. And what is so unique about what you do is diversity without division. And these things still happen, but it seems as if, are people open to understand this is still reality for our country, people?
I think people are, but it's how you broach the topic, right? I think everybody knows this, and certainly anybody who's married knows it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And the same goes for conversations that can be uncomfortable, conversations that are around taboo subjects. And diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're not just taboo for being taboo, it's because it's so personal. Right? Because it's about you, who you are, how you show up, what you look like, what your abilities are, what your sexuality is. And so, everything is kind of up for scrutiny and judgment. And I think that the way that a lot of DEI has been done by very well-meaning and well-intentioned people has gone off the rails. And that's why we've had this incredible backlash that we've seen, because it really should be a conversation of how do we bridge the divide? How do we shift the focus from what separates and divides us, which is always going to be, to what it is we have in common, which we do have more in common than we don't? How can we be truly inclusive of one another? But most importantly, and as I say, powerfully, how can we be introspective, understand your value and worth so you can see it in someone else? And I think where things kind of went sideways was so much of the focus was on the external. Right? Well, you need to use these words for these people, and you need to have this attitude about this group. And no, you need to look at yourself and follow the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated. And the platinum rule, treat others as they would like to be treated. And it really isn't that hard. It's kind of common sense, but it requires conscious empathy.
But how, I can understand how you got led to comedy. One, because I know you, and two, because I've watched your TED Talk and some of your comedy routines on YouTube. But in your book, and I want to pull up the first quote, your book, You Can Be Perfect or You Can Be Happy. You talk about different concepts here. There's one quote where you talk about the grass. People always say the grass is always greener. You say, I prefer to say the grass is always greener when you water your own lawn. I think you've just hit upon that, but tell me more. What are you trying to say to people in the book with that?
Well, I think we are always looking for external validation, right? I also believe the greatest lie that we, meaning all of us, humankind, humanity, has been told is that we're not enough. And so we look for these external things, external people, tangible objects, material things, and certainly other people's approval to feel like we're worthy. And when you're worried about what other people are thinking, you're not pouring into yourself, not in the right way. You may look the look and walk the walk a little bit, but is that really how you are feeling? Is that your authentic you? Mm-hmm. And so when you're taking care of yourself, really pouring into yourself, that's when you're watering your own lawn.
Did you come about that over a period of time? Because I played the clip. You
talked about... I was born this way. I was born enlightened.
Yeah, but you talk about the all-white cast of Raisin in the Sun. You were the raisin, but you also talk about in your TED Talk things that white people would be uncomfortable saying. You use the term black scent. And I know if I were to say that term on the street, I'd get slapped. I'd be, oh my God, I'd be canceled on X. But you talk about this, and this is the authentic who you are.
Well, I think it depends on your audience, right? It's always, who are you speaking to? Because if you'd said that to me, I know what you meant, and we're boys like that, right? Like, right. So again, it depends on who you're speaking to, and there are some people who are always looking to be offended. It does not matter what you say, what time of day you say it. If there is something that can make them a victim, if there is something that they can pick at because you affected their sensibilities, they will do that, right? And there's a hint of narcissism to that, which I think is very rampant in this country right now. And that's not a political thing because it's on the left and it's on the right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, when we are discussing how to engage with other people, it's one of the top rules in comedy. I mean, the first rule is be funny, right? And rule 1.5 is know your audience.
I would not be good in comedy. I have not shared this story because
I disagree.
Well, thank you, but I got accused of this phrase always whacks me up. A cultural appropriation. As a Jew, I want the bagel back. When they put blueberries in bagels, whoever put Sarah Lee should be shot. But look, I got accused of cultural appropriation when I was at Yahoo Finance because God forbid I held up my favorite book. I read it when I was 19. My favorite book is The Color Purple. I think Alice Walker created a great work of art. I have a hard copy, a first edition of it. And I held it up during a discussion we were having about something. And a member of the Yahoo Finance team, who's no longer employed there, accused me of cultural appropriation. And I remember thinking to me, what crazy planet am I on?
Wait, I have to ask, did you imitate Oprah Winfrey's voice?
No, I did
Danny
not.
Glover? What did you do? That's absolute insanity.
Of course.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
People are so worried about virtue signaling, right? Look at what a good person I am because I was upset by this. Sometimes they aren't even the person of the ethnicity that is being talked about. That's what blows my mind.
Okay, so let's do this. Because you've had some pain. This has not all been laughs for you. I want to talk about what you experienced with Don Imus. And people really don't appreciate the quiet role that people like you have in making a difference for thousands of others. We're going to talk about that when we come back, and I want to remind everybody, you can ask Karith any question you want. You can text us on Twitter. You can text us through the YouTube link, and we've got the link up there too if you want to come on video, if you want to show your face. I have a friend who's lost 100 pounds. He should be showing his face. He's looking really good. He's watching too, so he should use that link if he can figure out the computer, the internet machine. And he always calls me a Luddite, and ask questions. We'll be back in 30 seconds, and we're going to pick it up with Karith Foster regarding Don Imus. Welcome back to Talkenomics Live. Karith Foster, the comedian, how would you describe the work you do with INversity Solutions? How do I...
So I am a bridge builder, okay?
Yeah.
I come into organizations, corporations, colleges, universities, and teach them how, give themselves permission to be human and authentic and to be like next level communicators, because they are engaging in just phenomenal forms of empathy and ways to have discussions that would normally scare other people away. Quite often, I think we've been told, you can't say that, you can't do that. Like that. Remember that TV show when we were kids? You can't do that on television.
Yes.
Right? Well, now it's like, you can't do that in the office. You can't do that in real life. You can't do that at school. And it's like, but if we don't do that, if we don't address it, then it festers or it gets swept under the rug where it just becomes a powder keg.
Right. Which is why when you refer to yourself as having an inner 14-year-old boy, I'm thinking, yes, everyone needs to do the right cheek pull up in the office, but then deny it was them as people go, what was that? Quite seriously, we're going to talk about the Don Imus experience you had, but I want people, this is a roughly 40-second soundbite from the TED Talk, and people should turn this into an audio meme that they listen to when they need inspiration. Roll that clip.
Y'all, here's the thing. Sometimes you choose risk, and sometimes risk is thrust upon you. There is power in being yourself in a world that wants and expects something else. Being true to you is quite possibly the greatest risk you will ever take, and the most daring one. So never let anyone deny, dismiss, or squander the power of your voice. Honor the power of your voice because it's yours. It's unique. And you never know who might be listening or whose life it will change, including your own.
I love that, but I know what you went through to get there. So, what was it, 2008? I mean, Don, I was at WNBC when he made the comment that got him into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And
it
then
was 2007.
Was it 2007? Yeah.
He did it in April 2007.
Right, 2007, yeah.
Because I got the call, hey, you interested in a radio TV gig? Yeah, of course. By the way, it's with Don Imus. And I remember saying, nappy-headed hose, Don Imus? Like there was another one.
WNBC. Oh, that was the other guy. Howard Stern.
Yeah. And by December 2007, we were on the air on WABC. And at the time, RFG TV, later to become Fox Business News. They would go to Fox Business News.
Yeah. I remember him at Fox Business, and he was not easy. That's another story. But your story is what's important. So you did a year with Imus.
No, I did more. I was there for 2 years.
You were there for 2 years.
Two of the three.
Okay. But then tell the ending, because I think it took a great deal of, as the Russians would say, cojones, to do what you did.
Well, he essentially, long story short, got in trouble for saying some disparaging remarks, if you did not know the story about the Rutgers women's basketball team,
right,
including calling them nappy-headed hoes, which I honestly, still to this day, I do not believe he even knew what that meant. And I'm not giving him a pass, but he was an old, rich, white guy trying to be hip and cool and use vernacular of the day, and he didn't know. Now, that doesn't absolve him of any requirements for an apology for using completely abhorrent messaging, but, and I do still sincerely believe he was contrite in his apology, because that saying, honor among thieves, like his one thing was, you don't talk about people's kids. You don't talk about children. And he considered them kids. Right. And so when he realized what he had done, and then the abuse that the Rutgers women's basketball team was suffering, when at away games, he was sincerely contrite. Because here's the thing, the man has said way worse on purpose and never apologized.
But he asked you talk about this in the TED Talk. So things are going well, but
things are great. But he wanted me to be the voice he couldn't be.
Right.
And that's where the issue was, because I don't really do voices. That's just not my comedy style.
Hmm.
It never was. And I don't have the black accent. I mean, I am a product of my environment. And I didn't grow up around my cousins from Atlanta or the East Coast. And
Hmm.
I get made fun of at family reunions because of it.
It's all
I'm
right.
just Karith and I talk like this. And if I affect my voice to make it sound a certain way, it
Hmm.
doesn't sound right to me. Like it literally, and I hate saying this because it's like there is no talking white or black, but for context, it does sound like a white person trying to sound black. So it doesn't even sound
Right.
like authentic because it's not, because that's not who I am.
Right.
And so when I wouldn't do that and have the black effect on my voice, the
Hmm.
quote unquote stereotypical effect, he got angry and he did everything in his power to get me to quit. But he'd done that to other people too. He did
Yep.
that to Janice Dean, the Fox meteorologist.
Oh,
She and I
yep.
bonded over that.
Hmm.
And the fact that she left him to go to Roger Ailes said something about the kind of person he was.
Yes. Whoa! I don't want a lawsuit from Fox, but
Yeah, no,
yes.
sorry.
No, it's okay. But what people don't realize is you made the decision. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I think it's look. We live in a world right now where there are people we know. Oh, they sell their souls.
And it was a nice salary,
I'll
but it
bet.
wasn't worth it. It
Yeah.
wasn't worth it.
And that's what I think speaks volumes about who you are is, you're walking away from something like that sends a message to thousands of younger people. I sound like the old cocker here, but you can say no. And no, as you point out, is a powerful word.
Yeah, it is. Because you know what? It's not saying no to someone else, it's saying yes to yourself.
Right. So where did you get the idea for the book? You can be perfect or you can be happy.
So when I had my first daughter, it was a decent enough pregnancy. By the end, I was getting close to maybe having preeclampsia. I didn't quite test, and I was doing some things I probably shouldn't have. Like on a Monday, I shot stand up in stilettos for the TV Guide Network, a comedy special, and then on Friday, I gave birth. So
Water.
just regular mom stuff.
Right.
But when she was born, she was only 4 pounds, 10 ounces, teeny tiny, even though she was measuring 6.5 pounds. And I was trying to do everything as natural as possible. I did have her in water successfully, fortunately, but she wasn't latching to breastfeed, to nurse. And by day 3 or 4, she was literally withering away. And the pediatrician was like, "Oh, babies always lose weight afterwards." The midwife was like, "Hold on a second." And she went and got some milk from the birthing center that mothers had donated. And she put a little syringe in my baby's mouth. And it was like watching a black and white TV turn color.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this moment of, those commercials or the memes, like, you had one job. My one job was keeping this human alive, and I was failing miserably. And I was beating myself up. And I had a girlfriend who happens to we share a birthday. And she came to visit me and give me some love. And she said, "Look, Karith, you can be happy or you can be perfect. I choose happy." And, of course, the heavens should have opened up and a chorus of angels should have started singing. But I just thought that was nice of her to say. I'm still struggling, but it always stayed in the back of my mind, Adam. And I juxtaposed it, right? You can be perfect or you can be happy. And it's like, yeah, happiness is a choice and perfection is a lie. And it's not that I don't want people to strive for excellence, because that's what we should be striving for, not perfection, because there is no such thing as perfection. Because as soon as you would attain it, it's literally like catching the golden carrot in the cart in front of you. As soon as you catch it, seconds later, a bigger, shinier, brighter carrot is right in front of you. And you will be perpetually chasing this perfection that is going to exhaust you financially, mentally, emotionally. And for what? For what? And I thought about all the times in my life that I have spent trying to be the perfect daughter, student, employee, boss, friend, girlfriend, wife. And what was that costing me? And most of all, it was costing me joy. It was costing me peace. It was costing me happiness. And the thing about happiness is, again, it is a choice. It is as individual as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes you happy now may not make you happy in 5 years. So it definitely is on a scale. But here's the caveat. And I think it's very, very important for everyone to hear and understand this, that happiness is not a constant. And we have been, again, kind of duped by society and the, folks that are on TV and in social media, with these perfect lives and these perfect living rooms and these perfect setups. And they're actually probably pretty miserable. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to have a bad weekend, to stay in bed for 3 weeks. You should talk to someone.
Yeah, I've had a couple bad years.
Right. I think 2024 was rough for a lot of people.
Yeah, 2022 to 2024. But,
yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I hear you, and that concept. I got a dear friend who refers to people who are constantly chasing happiness as bliss ninnies, and he's insulting those people. And what I've come to learn is what you learned before I did, and I'm older than you are, not by much, but I'm there. In fact, I'm eligible for IRA withdrawals without having penalty. So, ooh, yay to me! There you go, bragging. Dinner's on me. But here's the deal. That happiness it doesn't mean that things are going well. It's more like being able to just, today sucks, but tomorrow's going. Scarlett O'Hara, tomorrow's another day, kind of thing. So yeah,
it's finding gratitude in the little things. Like today, I had 2 kids home from school, not feeling good. I went out to the grocery store to get some stuff, but I was like, you know what? I am so blessed that I can do this, that I can go out to a grocery store. I can buy the essentials that I need.
Yeah, wait till they start dating.
So, what'd you say?
Wait till they start dating.
Oh, I don't. Look, why see, now you're trying to ruin my happy. I've
done that for lots of people. No, but I get it. Gratitude is important. We've got a comment from Betsy, and I want to bring this in because she writes, I appreciate Karith's comment that was something like, I did something for myself. How do you do that and achieve financial security at the same time? She beat me to the quick, but that's a question because how do you do that?
Well, you're the financial guy. What I can say is this. When you do something for yourself that is not harming anyone else, that is not robbing from anyone else, you are actually taking care of yourself. That is self-care. That is not selfish, right? You're also not harming anyone else in the making of this film.
No, I get you. I doom scroll and I come across the algorithm is sending me these ridiculous videos about, you put it out to the universe and it comes back, but don't ask and all this crap. But what I will tell you is, since I'm 17 years old, I've always panicked about finances and being able to take care of myself. And then the day hit, it's like, I'm not going to say the F word, but what the fuck? I did say it. It's a stream. I can get away with it. I have insurance. I'm okay. And then when I wound up, because of some choices I made, which didn't work out how I ever thought they would have intended, but I wind up working for myself. And now it's more like, yeah, okay, well, what I've discovered is that somehow, and I hope this continues, enough money finds me, so maybe there's some truth to it.
So when I was on with you and Ken a couple of weeks ago, I was telling you about a book that I was listening to, this audiobook by Amanda Francis called, More Money Than You Know What to Do With, like rich as F, basically. And she talks about money being frequency and energy that we attract to us or repel based on how we feel about it.
Yeah.
And I've started applying some of these principles. And it is very interesting how we don't think about money necessarily that way as a frequency, right? Even though we call it currency, right? And it ebbs and flows, but it ebbs and flows according to how we are actually attracting it like magnets. And I know that sounds so out there, but there's a reason people like T. Harv Eker and Zig Ziglar and all these folks have been talking about it, Neil Goddard, for so long, because everything is frequency. Everything is energy. There's no denying that. Like, that's scientifically proven.
Yeah, I agree with you, but now I'm going to date myself. Whenever I hear the word frequency, I think of Dan Rather. What's the frequency, Kenneth? I mean, and you have to be 40 or over. You may not even know.
I don't know that.
He alleged to have gotten mugged. He missed a broadcast or something, and he said
Okay.
someone approached him on the street and roughed him up and said, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" So whenever I hear people use the word frequency, I think of the Dan Rather.
What? I don't even know what that means.
Well, I don't think the world did back in the 1980s when he used that as his excuse.
What's the frequency, Kenneth?
Yeah, they'll bring it up when Dan Rather dies. I'm sure the obituaries will mention that issue. We
And
have,
if not, you will.
yes, yeah. If I still have a live stream,
That's what you're here for.
we have another comment. Let's bring this one in. This is from Linda Lane. Since actions have consequences, what do you do when your actions don't, don't work out as planned? This is what dating in the gay world is like. But what do you do when your actions don't work out?
Well, I look for the lesson. Quite honestly, I've learned to do that. And can I tell you something else that I've learned to do? I've learned to find teachers and some of the most unlikely sources. Because I think we think of the great teachers of our lives as the people who inspire us and the people who got us to, figure something out or get a subject or, change our career path. But sometimes some of the greatest teachers are some of the people who do the nastiest, dirtiest, most down low things, because it teaches you, A, how strong you are, and you get these amazing life lessons out of it. So always, always look for the lesson. And it doesn't have to be like this horrible, horrible experience. It could be an argument with someone you love. It could be, an altercation in a parking lot. Like, what was the lesson here? Was it that I need to slow down? Was it that I need to pay more attention? Was it that I need to not be as frazzled and uptight when it's just, this little thing? So not everything is going to work out the way that we planned it to. Like, otherwise, how that wouldn't be life.
Right.
That would just be completely predictable programming.
Yeah. Well, there are people who think we're avatars in some space.
Well, I do think we're in a
world.
matrix. I'm not going to lie.
there you go. When you were talking about
weird stuff is going on.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about life lessons, all I keep thinking about is I keep skipping school. So, I've got a lot of makeup to do. I want to ask you about, because I didn't appreciate your years on radio, and I didn't know you then, with Patrice O'Neill. And what was that like for you? Because people on the TED Talk, everybody go to YouTube and you can find Karith. It's very easy to see this TED Talk, and then go look at her comedy stuff, because I know she'll get in trouble with some of that. But if you look, people are saying, "Oh, now I know what you look like," because it was because you were on radio with
Right.
What was that? What was that like?
It was awesome. I mean, Patrice O'Neill was a genius, and he was ahead of his time. And I say this with the utmost love. I wish he had been bigger than he was while he was alive. I don't mean size wise. He was a hardy guy, but I mean, I wish his career had blossomed the way it should have. But in all, again, frankness, I think he was a self-saboteur, as a lot of great comedians are. For some reason, it does attract a very interesting, eclectic group of people who have some self-esteem issues. And he came off as incredibly confident, and he was on stage. But I think there's still parts of us, when we talk about wanting success, right, financially or otherwise, that don't believe we deserve it. And I think it took Patrice a while to get to the place where he thought he deserved it. And by the time he did, unfortunately, he got sick, he had a stroke, his diabetes kind of took over, and he passed away. But I know there were several opportunities that he had that he let his ego get in the way. But maybe it was also just the self-doubt that took over. And so, when we talk about seizing opportunities and doing things and, putting that fear and the doubt behind us, that's self-care, right? That is taking the bull by the horns, because if it doesn't work out, so what? You get up and you get going again.
So I have to talk to you about taking the bull by the horns, because you just went to CPAC.
I did.
Do tell.
I did. Well, let me just say, it was the last place I ever thought this brown girl from Texas was going to
Yeah.
be.
Steer clear of Matt Schlapp. Is that his name? Yeah. It's like, well, you're the wrong gender, but we're going to get sued. What?
I really went with an open mind, quite honestly. I went with my journalism hat on. I went to just see what it was about. I went to conduct interviews. I went just to like as an investigator. Like
Mm-hmm.
again, I would have never really voluntarily gone, but I got to go as media. And I got to interview people from like January 6th who were
Mm-hmm.
there like storming the Capitol. And there was this one kid, he was so cute and clean cut and sweet. I go, how did a nice boy like you end up at the He goes, well, we went as like my whole family went as like a vacation. And I go, you know, most people go to Disney World.
Right. You're right. I was just thinking that this could be a new ride at Disney World. It's like January 6th, right next to Cinderella's castle, everybody. Like, go on.
Okay. But I mean, I got to meet people like that and have real heart-to-heart conversations. I got to interview Grant Cardone, you know, one of my favorite speakers and entrepreneurs. And I saw such an amazing range of people, Adam, from the, you know, the little old ladies in their remember the pink ladies jacket from Greece, but it was sequins and it said Trump on the back. You know,
Yeah.
I saw those people.
Yeah.
I saw people who were conservatives were like, I don't know about this whole thing. I saw some people who were, you know, converted from liberals to
Oh, yeah.
conservative because they just were like, enough of what's happening on this side.
Right.
And I saw some people that were just there to see what was happening. And it was a fascinating social experiment.
An experiment for you, but you know, it brings up. I think when you said earlier that in INversity, when you're looking for diversity without division, the common denominator is that we're all Americans. Yeah. You and I used to talk about that, and that is the common denominator. Although I don't think the country, I don't think the country does ask a lot of us, but not enough perhaps. And I don't think a lot of us are giving back to the country as we should. Another discussion. Some producer, sign us up. We want to talk about this. But when I think about the people I've encountered, I interviewed Steve Bannon. I think my first month at Yahoo Finance, and I remember, you know, talk about interviewing Voldemort. And there's a picture of me. God help, I don't ever want it out there, but I'm standing next to him with a big smile. It's like I interviewed Steve Bannon, and I'm like, but here's the architect of chaos. And now I'm just like, that was not a high moment in my life, but you know.
He gave a talk there at CPAC.
I bet he did.
The thing is, when you're there and you're seeing these things live, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're there for the 15, 20-minute talk, not the sound bites that you get on news, because that's all you get unless you're actually watching the whole thing. And you know this. Anything can be taken as a sound bite and manipulated and out of context.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what I genuinely appreciated. Being able to see Sarah Huckabee Sanders giving a full talk, being able to hear Trump give a full talk, Steve Bannon give a full talk, so that I could make my own, you know, opinions based on what they say, how genuine I felt it was, what it said, you know what I mean? And I definitely, I don't want to say I walked away with completely different opinions about these people, but it was insightful. It was insightful. And it does make me wish that we had more of an opportunity to hear from people. But then again, like, I guess he has his own podcast, so you can tune in every day and get an idea of who he is and what he's about, right? So, but it was fascinating to be there in that respect when I probably wouldn't go listen to his podcast daily.
I'm with you. I mean, one of the podcasts I did at Fox when Talkenomics was their property. It wasn't their property, but I did it for them. Right. I brought on, I can't think of her name right now, but the head of the Democratic Socialists of America on Fox. And I got her to admit, we were just talking, she talked about, oh yeah, you know, there should be no private property. And I said, well, who gets to decide if you've got 5 kids, you know, who lives in the 3-bedroom apartment? She said, your neighbors. And I'm like, oh, I don't like my neighbors. No way. But, you know, it's just
not gonna happen.
Yeah, cray. We have a viewer who wants to ask you a question. So let's bring in, I believe, Mitch. Mitch joining us. What's your question for Karith?
My question's for both of you.
Okay.
With the... this new, I know, because Karith, you're, I know your foundation is about freedom of speech and things like that. What are you thinking about with this situation with Trump, where he's yelling at reporters and telling them that they can't talk to him that way?
Well, he's definitely exercising his free speech. You know, here's the thing about free speech. just because you believe in it doesn't mean you condone all of the speech that is out there. And I certainly don't condone hate speech. And I certainly think that people should have every opportunity to ask questions and to answer them. But it does get very intricate when you talk about what organizations are required to apply and follow the First Amendment, because private institutions have a very different way to play the game of free speech than public. And that's why it's controversial on a lot of college and university campuses. And so you probably were referencing the fact that I'm on the advisory board for FIRE, which is the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Because as a comedian, as a speaker, I am a free speech advocate, and I am of the belief that the only way you fight bad free speech is with more better free speech.
That's we're a different generation, because I don't think the current generation believes that. But Mitch, is that question for me too?
Yeah.
Here's my feeling on it, because I was at Trump, the beta version, or the beta version, Trump 1.0, covering them at the White House, and my feeling is the national media and reporters take the bait all the time. I think the way to respond is to laugh, but to still report stuff. Look, Jim Acosta, who left CNN. God bless Jim Acosta for doing very hard work. Now, Jim Acosta was a combative SOB. I was in the White House press room when he would ask questions to show just how combative he could be. So there is a bit of when you're yelling at a newsmaker who has a responsibility to answer your question, what's good for the gander, what is the expression? Good for the goose is good for the gander. So how could you not expect someone like Trump to not yell back at you? But you should think about, there's a guy I used to work with a billion years ago back in the Jurassic Age named Chris Hernandez. He was a reporter on TV. He was a public official, the spokesperson, I think, for Kansas City for several years. And he got fired, or he got dismissed, and he won a lawsuit against the city because the city manager the head of the manager's office, wanted him to lie, wanted the press person to lie. And Hernandez wouldn't do it. And he won the lawsuit against Kansas City. So God bless him. But, if Trump yells at you, some reporters wear that as a badge of honor. But the danger is you got to be able to get the information. You need people like Chris Hernandez who are going to give the reporters the information that they ask for. The Obama White House, I'm going to ramble here, but I remember going into the Obama, when I was at the White House, I was up for the lead role in The Gypsy Lover. What happened? I didn't get it. When I was at the White House, I walked into the Obama office, the press room, it's behind the podium there, and I asked a question of the number 3, and the reaction I got was I wanted to hit this person. But my immediate reaction was, you know what? If this person's reacting to me that way, because it was just a question about some background data, imagine what they're getting from the people above them. So it kind of works both ways, but Trump is just a master at doing it in public. And then making, no good comes to anyone around Donald Trump. I mean, just run away. You're never going to win. No one should ever engage with thinking they're going to win.
Adam, you just reminded me of a song at my yoga place. Because it's a sign. It said, do hot yoga because throat punching people is unacceptable.
So my brother John does yoga, and he came up with a thing which he would get canceled for saying, but he said he wants to do a thing where someone will ask him, what does namaste mean? And he'll say, let me use it in a sentence. You want to go to a movie? Namaste home.
When I was teaching kickboxing, our slogan was, punch a bag, not your coworkers.
There you go.
I don't know. I've had some coworkers in the past who needed to be punched. Anything else, Mitch?
No, I think I'm good.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay,
Karith, let me ask you, what's coming up for you? Because are you on the comedy circuit still, or are you solely with INversity?
Like this much. I mean, not that I don't love it, I do, but my calling has taken me more into the corporate arena, where I do a lot of executive coaching with organizations around the country and the world. Again, helping them have these really challenging conversations, but also improving communication. Because honestly, I get why the word diversity isn't like it never really fit what I did anyway, which is why I kind of had to come up with my own word
Mhm.
because we technically don't have a diversity problem. We got plenty of diversity. We have a communication problem, we have a connection problem. So I now say what I do is fostering connection culture. That's what I help people do.
Mhm.
Did you know that I think we may have talked about this, but if not, do you know what the US Surgeon General said the number 3 cause of death was in 2023?
Kale.
Kale? Did you say kale?
Yes.
Love you so
No,
much.
no. I'm serious. What
I
was it?
wish. No. Loneliness. Loneliness. People are dying from loneliness for multiple reasons, whether it's something self-induced, whether it's they're not being cared for because they have isolated themselves. And my one of my issues with the way that the whole DEI train went was that so much of it was creating these sanctions, or these, we would siphon people off into these areas where, well, I'm part of this group, and if you're not part of it, then you don't get it. And it was just more like identity politics
Mhm.
that went the wrong way, as opposed to it being a positive of like, look, yeah, this is part of who I am. It's not all of who I am, but it's part of who I am, and I want to be able to express that freely. So instead, people feel really isolated. And I think that if we could learn to connect, and this is where the whole belonging part of that conversation, which started to come into play, happened. I was in a lovely New York Times article about the work that I do.
Mhm.
And it was talking about, DEI introducing belonging. Well, that should really be at the forefront. But
Mhm.
what people also need to understand is that belonging, that's not just on the onus of the companies or the organization. This is definitely a two-way street, and it has to be a reciprocal commitment to wanting to be part of something, and wanting someone to be part of something. So it's not just one way.
But let me ask you where we are at this moment in time in the United States. We see the leaders of the big companies, and you're there in corporate America having these discussions. But 3 years ago, it was all about DEI. And I think they were, well, we know now they were paying lip service to it. And then they let
Yeah.
other people try and deliver on it. Or maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I am.
Well,
But where do we stand right now?
I we I'm going to look at this as the optimist that I am.
Mhm.
And I think we stand in a place where we can not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but regroup and really double down in our commitment to creating these spaces of belonging and inclusion that everybody feels like they're part of. Not just because you're part of a marginalized group, not just because you're running the company and you happen to be the straight white guy, and we don't have to have talks about unconscious bias anymore. Like that, to me, like you said, that was lip service. And I think part again of the reason there was such a collapse is that when 2020 happened, George Floyd happened, let's just be honest, the floodgates for a lot of DEI initiatives opened up. And I mean, I got calls from a over 100-year-old brewing company that we all know that was like, oh, we're just starting our diversity committee. Like, can you want to give us some advice? I'm like, you're over 100 years old. And now you feel like you want to get on the train. Well, that's great, but instead of listening to what I had to say, they just were kind of picking from the quote unquote minorities of their HR department and being like, well, you're a minority, so you're in a marginalized group, you figure this out for us.
Mhm.
No support, no money, literally throwing these poor people into the deep end of the pool with nothing to help. And so then we're shocked that all of this has gone to hell in a handbasket.
Oh, it went to hell in a handbasket. Can I ask you a quick question though?
Yeah,
When we regroup, do we have to include the French?
we do. We.
I'm going to give you the last word before we wrap up. And just I
Are
have
we done? Seriously? This is over?
we're going to be done soon, but not. It's
Okay.
not over. It's not
Okay.
over. Because
Oh,
wait,
no,
there's more. What was it? The old Ron
Wait,
Popeil?
yeah,
But
the
wait, there's more.
infomercials from the 80s. But
Yeah,
wait,
no,
there's more.
I have ulterior motives. I had an ulterior motive when I asked you to join us with Ken Rosado. I had a motive. I wanted people to know more about you and what you're doing, and I want you back. because doing this on my own at times is a heavy burden. I want to sucker you into it, but I am curious as we wrap up. What is immediately on your horizon? I know you're raising 2 teenage daughters, so I know what's front and center for you there. But what would you want people to take away? And they can go to INversitySolutions.com. That's the URL,
yes.
if they want to bring you in to talk.
Yes. I think that not to be filled with angst and anxiety. I know we are in a very anxiety-ridden time right now. Don't get caught up in the hype. There are more good people out there than bad people. We just need to learn how to bring that to the forefront. And we just have to learn how to talk to each other and hear one another. And I was just recounting the other day, you and I were both in New York City for 9/11. And I was talking about what 9/13 was. And it was thousands of people at the Jacob Javits Center lined up to help with whether it was to donate blood or bring water or food or tools or whatever. And it was thousands and thousands of people for blocks. And in that moment, there was no ethnicity or religion or gender or sexuality or politics. It was just human beings there to help human beings. And it was one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. But I've seen it, I've felt it, I've been there, so I know it's possible. And we can get there again. We just have to be committed to that.
I want to remind everybody, because at this point, being a potential IRA withdrawal individual, I do sometimes have brain lapse, but it's INversity Solutions. INversity, and it's diversity without division. And you can bring Karith in to speak to your company, to your corporations. You can get her book on Amazon. Can we show the book one more time? You can be perfect or you can be happy. And Karith Foster, it's always a treat to see you. We're going to be putting out clips from this on social media, and I'll be calling you in the next few days to figure out when I get you back and who we can designate as who we want to bring in as a third party, and then we'll gang up on that person.
I love it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for watching us on Talkenomics. Just a reminder, every Wednesday, 7 p.m., we stream live. See, I can't even talk. We stream live from Brooklyn, New York. It's one of the boroughs in one of the largest cities in North America. So you have a great evening.